You open your laptop to work on something important. 3 minutes later, you're checking your phone. You put the phone down and get back to work. 90 seconds later, you're scrolling Instagram. You close Instagram and open your Notes app. Then you remember you need to look something up. 45 minutes later, you haven't written a single sentence and you have no idea where the time went. This happened yesterday. It will happen again today, and you will probably feel the same familiar shame about it each time. You've probably called this a focus problem, told yourself you need better discipline. Maybe you've tried productivity apps, website blockers, the Pomodoro technique, putting your phone in another room. None of it sticks for long, and you blame yourself for that. But what if the real problem isn't that you can't focus? What if your ancestors never needed to focus in the first place? What if the ability to sit still and stare at one thing for hours isn't a natural human skill you're failing at, but a modern invention your brain was never built for? For most of human history, the people who survived weren't the ones who could focus deeply on one task. They were the ones who could scan constantly. The ones who noticed movement at the edge of the forest while gathering berries. The ones who heard a twig snap while drinking water and reacted immediately. Deep focus on a single thing would have gotten you killed. A human so absorbed in sharpening a spear that they didn't notice a leopard crouching 20 feet away did not pass on their genes. Your brain inherited that scanning circuitry. It's still there, fully operational, running beneath everything you do. Researchers at the University of California measured how often the average knowledge worker switches tasks. They found that people switch tasks every 40 seconds on average, not every 40 minutes, every 40 seconds. And each time you switch, it takes about 23 minutes to return to the same level of focus you had before the interruption. Most people never return. They just keep switching all day, every day, mistaking busyness for productivity. And it treats every interruption the same way it treated a potential threat on the savannah. Something changed. Check it now. Doesn't know the difference between a leopard in the grass and a notification on your screen. Both trigger the same ancient reflex. There's a reason for this mismatch, and it has nothing to do with modern technology. Your brain is running on hardware that was finalized long before the first city was built. Every generation of your ancestors passed down the same neural wiring, generation after generation, for hundreds of thousands of years. The world changed. The wiring didn't. You're trying to use a hunter-gatherer brain in a hyper-connected information economy, and the brain doesn't know it changed jobs. In the 1990s, a neuroscientist named Wolfram Schultz ran a series of experiments on monkeys that changed how scientists understand attention and reward. He tracked dopamine neurons while giving monkeys a juice reward paired with a light cue. At first, dopamine fired when the juice arrived, but as the monkeys learned that the light predicted the juice, something unexpected happened. The dopamine shifted. It stopped firing at the reward. It started firing at the light. The anticipation itself became the reward. This is the reason you check your phone 60 times an hour, not because the content is satisfying. Because the half-second before you unlock the screen, when you don't yet know what's waiting for you, your brain releases a tiny hit of anticipation. The checking is the reward. The content almost doesn't matter. Think about how strange that actually is. You're not checking because you want to see something. You're checking because the not knowing feels better than the knowing. The psychologist George Lowenstein called this the information gap theory. He argued that curiosity is not a desire for knowledge. It is a desire to close a gap between what you know and what you want to know, and the discomfort of that gap is what drives you to check, not the value of the information itself. The unpleasant itch of not knowing gets scratched by every pull of the lever. The uncertainty itself is what your brain is chasing. Once you know what's there, the spell breaks and you need a new uncertainty to chase. So you close one app and open another. You finish one video and immediately start the next. The content is just the excuse. The anticipation is the drug. There's an older and stranger layer beneath this. A psychologist named B. F. Skinner discovered something about pigeons in the 1950s that explains your relationship with your phone better than any tech analysis ever could. He put pigeons in a box with a lever that occasionally released a food pellet. The pigeons that got a pellet every single time eventually got bored and stopped pressing. But the pigeons that got pellets at random intervals pressed the lever obsessively. They couldn't stop. Some kept pressing long after the food ran out entirely. The possibility of a reward mattered more than the reward itself. Skinner called this a variable ratio reinforcement schedule, and it is the single most powerful behavior-shaping tool ever discovered. Every time you pull down to refresh your feed, you're pulling that lever. Sometimes there's something interesting. Sometimes there's nothing at all. That unpredictability is not a flaw. It is the design. Put Schultz and Skinner together, and something alarming emerges. Dopamine spikes hardest during uncertainty. Unpredictable rewards drive compulsive behavior. Your phone runs both mechanisms at once, dozens of times a day, and neither one has anything to do with whether you actually enjoy what you find. You're not weak for checking. You're a biological system responding exactly as it was designed to respond. The problem is that the system was designed for a world where change was rare, and survival depended on noticing it immediately. Now change happens every few seconds, and most of it doesn't matter at all. But your brain doesn't know that. It still treats each notification like it might be the one that saves your life. In 2012, a researcher named Natasha Schultz spent 15 years embedded with slot machine designers in Las Vegas. She documented what she called the machine zone, a state where a gambler stops playing to win and starts playing simply to keep playing. Time distorts. Self-awareness fades. The outside world gets quieter. Schultz found that the most successful slot machines weren't the ones with the biggest jackpots. They were the ones that kept players in that trance the longest. Now look at your phone. The pull-to-refresh gesture mirrors the motion of a slot machine handle almost perfectly. The red notification badge is tuned to grab your eye faster than any other color. The infinite scroll removes every natural stopping point. These design choices were not accidents. They were built by teams who studied the same research you're hearing right now and applied it directly to the device in your pocket. But here's the part that should actually change how you feel about yourself. Your ancestors didn't have a machine zone. They had something closer to it. Every unfamiliar sound in the dark, every unexpected movement at the edge of camp, pulled their attention the same way your phone pulls yours. Anthropologists who study modern hunter-gatherer groups like the Hadza in Tanzania have documented something called vigilance behavior, a near-constant, low-level scanning of the environment that never fully switches off, even at rest. That scanning wasn't anxiety. It was survival. A brain that stayed a little bit alert, a little bit hungry for new information, lived longer than a brain that tuned everything out. You inherited that hunger. You didn't choose it. It was built into you before you were born, by ancestors who never once imagined a rectangle of glass that could satisfy it 100 times an hour. A researcher named Daniel Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize for his work on how the mind makes decisions, described two systems of thinking. System 1 is fast, automatic, and constantly scanning. System 2 is slow, deliberate, and requires effort to engage. What Kahneman discovered is that your brain defaults to System 1 by default. It has to. Scanning the environment for threats and opportunities is far more important for survival than deep analytical thought. Deep focus is System 2. It burns energy. It requires safety. It requires the brain to believe that no immediate threat is present. And for most of human history, that belief was almost never warranted. In that ancient environment, the scanning had natural limits. There was only so much landscape to check, only so many sounds to track, only so many hours before darkness made further vigilance pointless. The system had an off switch built into the world around it. Your environment removed that off switch entirely. There is always one more scroll, one more headline, one more notification that hasn't loaded yet. The ancient hunger is the same size it always was. The world offering to feed it has become infinite. This is why deep work feels so hard. Not because you're lazy, because your brain interprets the decision to focus as a decision to stop scanning. And stopping the scan feels dangerous. A psychologist named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi spent decades studying the state he called flow, the feeling of being completely absorbed in what you're doing. He found that flow requires a specific set of conditions: clear goals, immediate feedback, and most importantly, a challenge that matches your skill level. But there is a fourth condition that few people talk about. Flow requires safety. It requires your brain to believe that no predator is going to eat you while you're reading a book. And in the modern world, your brain never fully believes that. The notifications keep proving it wrong. It feels like putting down your guard. Your conscious mind knows you're safe in your home office. But the part of your brain that kept your ancestors alive doesn't understand home offices. It only knows that you stopped watching for threats, and that is exactly when threats appear. So when you sit down to work and find yourself reaching for your phone 40 seconds later, you are not failing at focus. You are a brain wired for scarcity dropped into an environment of infinite engineered abundance. The scanning reflex that once kept your ancestors alive is being triggered 100 times an hour by a rectangle of glass that was designed specifically to exploit it. You can't outwill a system that bypasses decision entirely. The pull isn't happening at the level of choice. It's happening in circuitry older than language. Telling yourself to try harder is like telling your pupils to stop dilating in a dark room. But understanding where the pull comes from changes something important. It turns a mystery into a mechanism, and mechanisms can be worked with. The next time you catch yourself reaching for your phone for no reason, pause for half a second. Ask yourself what your brain is actually looking for. Did something change? Should I check? Just asking the question creates a gap between the ancient alarm and your hand. A half second is often all it takes. You are not broken for getting distracted. You are running software that was never designed for the world you live in. Your inability to focus for hours is not a personal failing. It is a feature of a brain that was optimized for a completely different environment. The problem isn't your focus. It never was. The problem is that you inherited a hunter's scanning reflex, evolved to notice every change in a dangerous world. And then someone put a slot machine in your pocket that triggers that reflex 100 times an hour. You didn't lose focus. Your ancestors never had it. And now you know why. If this changed the way you think about that 45 minutes you lost this morning, tap like so more people see it. Send it to someone who checks their phone as much as you do. They'll probably recognize themselves in the first 30 seconds. And subscribe if you want more of the ancient reasons behind your most modern habits.